And you are live, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the October 17th, 2022 Board of Selectmen meeting. My name is Mitch Cohen, and I'm chairing this meeting, and I have some introductory remarks to read. This open meeting of the Northborough Board of Selectmen is being conducted remotely, consistent with the July 16th, 2022 Act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. All members of the Northborough Board of Selectmen are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows the Northborough Board of Selectmen to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of the meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link posted on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting, as always, will feature public comment. I'll go around the room and make sure everyone is audible. By the way it looks on my screen, Scott Rogers.
Present.
Jason Perot.
Present.
Kristen Wickstead.
Present.
Julianne Hirsch.
Here.
We also have several members of town staff, again, going in the order of my screen. Chief David Parenti of the Fire Department. Oh, we were talking to him.
I'm doing too many things at the same time. I'm trying to get people in the meeting and everything. Yes, I'm here.
Thank you very much. Lieutenant Brian Griffin, pinch hitting for the police department.
Present.
Scott Charpentier from DPW.
Present, Mr. Chair.
John Kader, town administrator.
Present.
Jason Little, finance director.
Present.
Becca Meekins, welcome back as assistant town administrator.
Present. Thank you.
Sure. And we also have Northborough Cable dealing with that end of things. Thank you very much. Let's get started. First thing on our agenda, as always, is public comment. If there is anyone, attendees, we have one hand up already. So if anyone wants to speak at the beginning of our meeting, I will bring you in. So I will allow you to talk. Kelly Gannett, you're coming in. You are muted, Kelly. So if you, there you go.
Hi.
Hi, Kelly.
Thank you. Kelly Gannett, 69 Northgate Road, Northborough. I just wanted to mention about something that's been going on in the schools. The calendar has been up for discussion. And I know you've all probably heard about it, but I just wanted to put it officially on your radar about one of the discussion points is removing elections from the school. So in the schools. So I just wanted to officially put it out there just so it can be on maybe a future agenda item or a way to open up the talking points or discussion for it. So that is it for tonight.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Okay, is there anyone else that wishes to speak from the public? I hear nobody, so let's get started. First thing is review and approval of the September 26, 2022 meeting minutes. Would anyone like to make a motion or say anything else to that effect?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to approve the meeting minutes from September 26, 2022 as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Scott, seconded by Julianne. Any other discussion? All those in favor, Scott Rogers.
Aye.
Jason Perot.
Aye.
Kristen Wickstead.
Aye.
Julianne Hirsch.
Aye.
And I also vote aye. Vote unanimous. Approved the meeting minutes. All right. Now, one of the big things for this evening, complete streets. John, do you want to kick this one off?
Actually, if the chief would promote Lori Connors, our town planner, she's going to at least lead this initial discussion. We do also have Megan McDevitt from Woodward and Curran, who is our consultant on this. So if you would promote her as well, please.
Absolutely.
Both are in.
There's Megan. And Lori, can you have your camera or your voice on, Lori?
Let me turn my camera on. Can you hear me okay?
We hear you and see you. Thank you for
There you
joining
go.
us.
Great.
All right. Tell us
And
about Complete
if you could
Streets.
enable me to share my screen, I have a PowerPoint presentation I would like to share.
As a panelist, you have the ability to do that.
All righty. And I am going to start the slideshow, so just bear with me a moment. All right, thank you for joining us this evening for this public information and input session. This is the crucial second step in becoming a complete streets community, which will ultimately result in making the town eligible for up to $500,000 in grant funding to fund a whole host of accessibility improvements that will make Northborough more accessible for people of all ages and abilities, as well as the various modes of transportation. So I'm here this evening with DPW Director Scott Charpentier and Megan McDevitt from Woodard and Curran, who is our consultant on this project. So I'd just like to briefly go over what we're going to be discussing this evening. We are going to go over what exactly is a complete street. We're going to be discussing the Mass DOT Complete Streets program. We're going to review Northborough's Complete Streets policy, which was adopted by the town back in last January. We're going to be going over the survey results. This is for an online survey, which was launched in August of this year. We're going to be reviewing the prioritization, excuse me, I'm a little tongue-tied this evening, prioritization plan projects that we have identified to date. And then we're going to launch into the public input session of the evening and go over question and answers. So at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Megan, who's going to go through the next several slides.
Thank you, Lori. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Again, my name is Megan McDevitt, project manager with Woodard and Curran. Enjoying working with the town on the development of this complete streets prioritization plan. And first off, you may be wondering, what is a complete street? Well, what that is a term to define when a road has been designed and operates so that it can encompass all alternative modes of transportation so that people of all ages and ability can use it. These are streets that are designed to think of safety, health, economic, all different things that makes your community more livable. So as you can see here, we have a picture of a complete streets that uses all different components like bike lanes and crosswalks, sidewalks, bus stops, things like that. Those are what the items we're talking about when we say complete streets. So if we go to the next slide, Lori. The question is, what is the Mass DOT Complete Street Program? And what it is, it's a funding program that Mass DOT put together so that they could help municipalities address critical gaps in transportation networks. And they do this by first educating the municipalities, helping them understand what complete streets are, and help them put together a complete streets policy so that they think about complete streets when they put projects out. And then the next goal of the program is to then help the communities fund these policies or fund these complete streets. And they do that by making sure and supporting the municipalities in the development of a plan, because we want to make sure we thoroughly think through and well design these concepts. And that's the process we're in right now here in Northborough. And once the team does, or the municipality has a complete street plan that has been approved by DOT, you're now eligible, as Lori mentioned, for construction funding up to $500,000 per funding cycle to actually implement these complete street projects. So if we go to the next slide. So again, this is just kind of talking about what different projects are eligible under this complete streets funding program. So it can be visual improvements to our streets, like street bicycle parking, landscaping, and stormwater management. We get into the safety things with intersection redesigns, curb extensions, signalization. All these are considered eligible. The big thing is we obviously have the pedestrian bike network connections, filling in those gaps, and also replacing ones that don't meet current standards. They're not ADA compliant, not wide enough, and they don't accommodate all different abilities. This is not just the sidewalks themselves, but the crossings, the interactions of the sidewalks and the bike lanes with the roads. Traffic calming measures and signalization. How do we make sure that it's safe for all different transportation modes, and even public transit? Ways to help encourage that are all eligible under Complete Streets programs. So we'll go to the next slide. So Northborough has taken the first step through the Complete Streets program through MassDOT by adopting a Complete Street policy that was adopted by everyone here back in January. And the town's policy does focus on making all the roads easily navigable for people of all ages, abilities, and in all different modes of transportations. And then once that was adopted, the town was able to secure a grant of $35,000 to get the technical assistance to prepare this prioritization plan that we are working on and sharing with you all today. So why is the plan important? Well, it's to help the town really think about how they can make the roads safe and incorporate as many transportation modes as possible. And it is a requirement for the funding program to have this in place so that you can apply for the additional funding to actually implement and construct those projects. And those applications go in once your plan is approved twice a year, either in May or October, to help set up for the next construction cycle. And so what have we done to date? What we've done is started by meeting town staff, so town engineer, town planner, Department of Public Works director, and kind of identify where there are some gaps in different projects that we may have. We've also kind of used this information to develop a survey that Lori's going to go over after to collect as much feedback as we could. And I will say it was great feedback and a lot of input for the residents of Northborough. It was quite impressive. We've reviewed all this feedback in detail and kind of developed a bunch of lists of potential projects that could be done. And the next step is to really kind of rank and put those projects in order of priority based on a combination of different things, the feedback we've received, all the things they do towards achieving the goal of Complete Streets, and other things like that. And that plan will be eventually submitted to DOT for review and approval. And so I believe now I'm going to hand it back to Lori to talk about the survey.
Great. Thank you, Megan. So as Megan mentioned, we launched this survey back in August, and it was a 6-question survey. We were excited that we received 808 resident responses within that 2-week time frame. So thank you to everybody who filled out the survey. The feedback was super helpful to this process. So of the 808 resident responses, that averages out to about 7% of the population that's age 18 or older. So that was pretty good. And these responses are going to be key to helping us prioritize the projects that we're going to go over later on this evening, as well as to identify additional projects. So this is the first question that we had in the survey. What eligible project types are most important to you? And the overwhelming response was making those network connections, both from a pedestrian and bicycle point of view. Second favorite answer was environment and streetscape improvements. So as Megan went over, those included streetlights and street trees, streetscape furniture, and the like. And the third category that received the largest number of responses was intersection redesigns. So within that category, we have intersection narrowing, bump outs, and the like. Second question was, where would you like to see a Complete Streets project implemented? The top 2 overwhelming responses were within established neighborhoods and the downtown area. Slightly behind those 2 responses were near schools and parks. third question was identify your top 2 infrastructure impediments to walking. So no surprise, there's a lack of sidewalks in many areas of town. So that was the overwhelming top choice. Second, too much traffic, which made walking kind of inhospitable and unpleasant experience. And the fact that there are many sidewalks that don't actually go anywhere. They don't lead to any destination like shopping or the like. And then the fourth highest response was the lack of maintenance. So there are a number of sidewalks that are cracked and broken and need to be replaced. So what 2 bicycle amenities do you feel are most needed? The top 2 responses were dedicated off-road multi-purpose trails, as well as on-road bike lanes and sharrows. And then coming, the last 2 were wayfinding signs, which certainly would be helpful to a lot of folks, as well as bike racks at key municipal destinations. What 2 pedestrian amenities do you feel are most needed? Number 1 were sidewalks that link neighborhoods to the downtown. Secondly, sidewalks that link neighborhoods to parks, playgrounds, and conservation areas, followed by sidewalks that link neighborhoods to schools. So I guess that really brings in the point in the prior question about sidewalks to nowhere. People want sidewalks that actually go somewhere. So the last question was an open-ended question where we asked if there was a specific location in town where folks would like to see a complete streets project implemented, and if they have a wish, what type of project would like to see. So in that category, the top projects were Route 20, Route 135 within the downtown, within proximity to schools, Brigham Street, and Church Street. So many of these projects that were listed on this survey are actually proposed as one of the projects that Scott will go over next. So 53% of the responses that we received on the question was sidewalk projects, followed by traffic improvements, and then followed by bike projects. So now I'm going to turn it over to Scott Charpentier, who's going to go over the list of 25 projects that we came up with. So Scott?
Thanks, Lori. So what you see before you is a list of those 25 projects. They check off a lot of the boxes on the survey results that Lori just went over. The projects are listed just in alphabetical order. There's no prioritization presented here, no regionalization. So they're simply alphabetically listed. The cost estimate you see here between $3.5 and $4.5 million is the 10,000 foot level cost estimate. It's not a detailed construction estimate. These are program level funding estimates. They can vary greatly when it comes to utility impacts, possible environmental impacts, and other components of unknown. But at least it gives us a good order of magnitude on what we're looking at. And this 3.5 to 4.5 will be broken down on each one of the upcoming project specific slides. Slide, Lori. So again, like I indicated, we focused our project evaluations on the results of the surveys, survey questions, including bike lanes and sharrows, shared arrows. That's where you have a shared use lane. Ways to address traffic calming mechanisms with bump outs. There was an identification for desires for off-road trails and for pedestrians and cyclists, sidewalks, and some of the streetscape items like street lighting and trees. Slide. So there's a variety of design elements that we consider. You'll see what a sharrow looks like here on the slide. It is a bike lane that is shared with vehicles along somewhat of a narrower corridor. This is the type of implementation you would use on a road like 135. If you would have a dedicated bike lane, it would be require a bit more of a pavement width like you'd see on Barefoot or Bartlett Street. Everybody's familiar with the rectangular rapid flashing beacons. We've implemented a few of those in and around town at our crosswalks near our recreational facilities. Those were funded through a Mass DOT grant. Bump outs, you'll see in the lower right-hand corner. It's a traffic calming mechanism to narrow the intersections a bit. And it also provides often provides a shorter pedestrian crossing path at the crosswalks. Slide. So this is our first project. We have a series of 25 project-specific slides. This one is a new sidewalk installation along Allen Street. We have a sidewalk on East Main and a sidewalk on Hudson. This would be a connectivity or a gap closure. Allen Street was repaved a few years ago. The repavement of Allen Street took into consideration this sidewalk. We also completed a survey for prospective easements along this corridor. When you install new sidewalks, it often requires easements and closed drainage. Those elements were pre-planned during the paving process on Allen Street. Slide. The next two are some of our trails that were identified. One is the Aqueduct Bridge. Everybody's familiar with that. Going over Hudson Street. We actually were, the town meeting approved grant funding for conceptual design and evaluation, structural evaluation, utility evaluation for this trail. That's in process now. This would result in some connectivity for our trails on each side of the river. The other Aqueduct Trail would be a paved section that exits Bartlett Street over by Bartlett Pond, wraps around over towards Cedar Hill. Slide. These two projects were identified in the roadway safety audit that was conducted a little over a year ago along Bartlett Street. It identified a few project needs. The roadway safety audit is a formal process that Central Mass Regional Planning Commission conducted with quite a bit of public outreach. One is a bike lane proposed along Bartlett Street from the high school to the town city line. When you exit Northborough and enter Marlborough, there are bike lanes on Forest, which is the extension of Bartlett Street and Marlborough. This would connect those bike lanes to Algonquin High School. The other project is some intersection improvements at Bartlett and Maple Street. One of the roadway safety audit recommendations was some reconfiguration of that intersection. If anybody's driven through that intersection exiting Maple onto Bartlett Street in the morning, it could be confusing and problematic with the way that turning lane configurations are trying to get from Maple across to the high school entrance. So that was identified as a prospective project for safety improvements. Barefoot Road is a very wide pavement section. We've identified that as a prospective new sidewalk and or bike path corridor. There are a lot of pedestrians that use that area. It would provide some connectivity as well between our senior center and along Barefoot Road with the businesses there, and then connectivity over to Solomon Pond Road. There are a lot of pedestrians that use that area, and a few of the properties are either have been recently redeveloped or are being redeveloped now. It is a very wide swath of pavement. Adding bike lanes and or sidewalks here would be a good traffic calming mechanism as well. Blake Street, excuse me, street lighting and streetscaping is the first of a handful of downtown projects that have been identified. Blake Street, when you pull onto Blake Street off of Route 20, it's sort of a sea of pavement when you get past the first parking area. Breaking up some of that expansive pavement with curbing, street trees, new sidewalks, and pedestrian and vehicle scale lighting, and some benches will add some inviting streetscape elements to that area. Chesterfield Road is a small project. That's Chesterfield at Northgate. There's a pedestrian crossing there that accesses the Proctor School. There's an easement, a walkway easement between two private properties that go to the school. It's used quite a bit by students accessing school, as well as the grounds there. General pedestrian improvements here could include rapid flashing beacons, bump outs, better pavement markings, accessible wheelchair ramps, and improvements to the walkway that actually runs along that easement. The Church Street sidewalk replacement, you'll see a series of projects that we've identified here. They connect a lot of our facilities, beginning on Howard Street at Winter Street, wrapping all the way around to Lincoln and Route 20. This is one segment of it. There is a crosswalk at Lower Pleasant Street here that could use pedestrian safety improvements, and the sidewalk from Howard to that crosswalk is non-compliant for accessibility. Davis Street sidewalk is another connectivity gap. There is the large access, to the large Northgate neighborhood up Lanthorn, as well as connecting the Indian Meadow neighborhood over to Hamilton Road. We have a sidewalk gap here between those two, so it would provide access, a pedestrian access from a large residential neighborhood that has sidewalks, the Indian Meadow neighborhood, across Davis Street into both directions to get into Northgate, to get into the Northgate neighborhood, Lower Northgate. These two projects are continuing along the downtown improvements. We recently completed some improvements to the Assabet playground. People are familiar with Gale Street. It's relatively narrow. There are no sidewalks. There are no street lights. The parking lots that are adjacent to Assabet are only Muni lots in that area, and it will provide safe pedestrian and streetscape access from these two parking lots and the playground to the downtown. The sidewalk extension would also connect up to the existing sidewalk that's on Monroe Street, providing pedestrian access around the block, Gale, Monroe, West Main Street, the Town Common, and back to Assabet. So the Howard Street sidewalk replacement is a continuation of what I was referring to earlier about some connectivity. We have the Z School in this area. We have the cemetery, Howard Street Cemetery here, and it would connect from Winter Street down along Howard Street in front of the Z School, connect up to the Church Street extension, Church Street sidewalk replacement that we just discussed. The Hudson Street sidewalk, there's a very small gap on Hudson Street. So in order to have a pedestrian access from Route 20 down to the aqueduct, there's a very short section of Hudson Street that does not have a sidewalk between Center Drive and the church. So it's a relatively small project, but it is closing a connectivity gap. Again, this Lincoln Street project continues that long corridor I was referring to earlier from Winter Street all the way over to West Main Street. There are segments along Lincoln Street that have compliant sidewalks. For example, in front of the Lincoln Street Elementary School, that sidewalk was recently reconstructed and is fully compliant. And there are sections that are not compliant. Completion of this project would connect in a ADA compliant fashion the Z School, elementary school, the cemetery, Howard Street Cemetery, our couple churches, the middle school, the elementary school, all the way over to West Main Street's commercial and business neighborhood. We discussed earlier addition of bike lanes along Bartlett Street. Well, adding bike lanes down Lyman Street to the Watson Park access is presented here as another possible project. It provides more cycle destination to the boat launch down at Bartlett Pond. So closing sidewalk gaps, we do have a sidewalk on Maple Street from Route 20 down to Ridge Road. It stops at Ridge Road. It passes the Peasley School. This has been identified as a sidewalk gap for both school access between Peasley and Bartlett Street. I'm sorry, Algonquin Regional High School on Bartlett Street. It'll also provide some pedestrian connectivity with the trails. There's a trail cross, the aqueduct for trail crossing is right around the middle here. So this is another sidewalk gap closure. These are two more of the downtown projects, paralleling what I discussed on Blake Street. There are some sidewalk gaps along Pierce Street and as well some non-accessible sidewalks along Pierce Street that would be replaced. And also the addition of some street lighting, both vehicle and pedestrian scale, to accent some of the streetscape improvements we talked about earlier on Blake. Pine Haven Drive is a large neighborhood, a large residential neighborhood that lies between Lincoln Street near the elementary school and the West Main Street commercial area. Often with these larger residential neighborhoods, portal sidewalks are implemented so that the smaller roadways can pour off into the portal roadways and have safe pedestrian access from the larger residential neighborhood to the destinations. In this case, the destinations are the elementary school as well as the businesses on West Main Street. The Pleasant Street sidewalk remove and replacement you see here is again another part of that connectivity from Winter to West Main. This is the section from Lower Pleasant where it meets Church Street up to Lincoln Street. The sidewalk is low, it's narrow, and it's non-compliant, and the crosswalks as well are not compliant with ADA standards. This is another connectivity sidewalk project. We have obviously sidewalks on Route 20 on Main Street, and I discussed earlier the continuous sidewalks we have on Hudson Street. This is a gap, so to speak, that we don't have sidewalks on to allow more pedestrian circulation in and around the downtown. So pedestrians can access the aqueduct, maybe not come back in the same direction, get up back onto Route 20. There is a sidewalk already on the River Street Bridge, so this would be a connection between Hudson Street and Main Street. We discussed earlier about what sharrows are and the desire in the community to have more on-road bicycle paths and access. So South Street, Route 135 from the intersection of West Main Street and Main Street down to Ellsworth McAfee Park. The addition of bike lanes or sharrows on each side of the roadway to allow vehicle and cycle accommodations. The other project you see, back up one.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. South Street, this is that loop that I was discussing earlier. That's this section of South Street sidewalk is cement concrete. It's in a bit of disrepair, and portions of it are non-compliant due to heaving of the cement concrete. And last, we have bicycle racks. So the grant that I discussed earlier, where we received funds from Mass DOT to install rectangular rapid flashing beacons at our recreational facilities, also included installation of some bike racks at those facilities. There's far more needs for bike racks in and around town. It's a small dollar value, but there's a great benefit from it to allow the cyclists to have destinations and places to put their bicycles when they reach them.
All right, thank you, Scott. So the reason why we're here tonight, in addition to providing you with this presentation and introducing you to the 25 projects, is we wanted to receive some feedback from you on the various projects. And in a minute, I'm going to pull up that list of 25 projects and ask you to identify the top 3 projects from the list. We're also interested in hearing from you if you think that there is a project that's missing that should be included. So after tonight, the Complete Streets team, which consists of Woodard and Curran and municipal staff, will rank the identified projects using the evaluation criteria listed here. So this evaluation criteria reflects the goals and objectives of the Complete Streets program as it is articulated by Mass DOT. So projects that are ranked the highest will check the largest number of boxes and have the greatest likelihood of being funded through the Complete Streets grant program and from other grant programs like MassWorks and the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant Program. So projects that are important to the town but don't check the greatest number of boxes will be ranked lower. And those are the projects that are really, we're going to have to rely on municipal funds for completion versus grant money. So I just wanted to quickly go over the evaluation criteria. And this is in no particular order. It benefits all users, incomes, and abilities. It enhances and creates a safe route to school. It links neighborhoods to shopping, recreation areas, or public facilities. It addresses a gap in the sidewalk network. It's an ADA accessibility improvement. It benefits the public health and the environment. It's a safety improvement. It's a shovel-ready project. It's a low-cost project or a project with external funding opportunities like MassWorks or the Complete Streets construction grant. And it is identified as a priority project via public input. So after tonight, and we complete the ranking program, then we're going to come back to the Board of Selectmen at a future meeting to review and approve the various projects and their ranking. So you're going to have another bite at the apple to look over the prioritization plan and approve it. So once the Board of Selectmen approves it, we will submit the final Complete Streets prioritization plan to Mass DOT for review and approval. So they are the final approval authority. They may require us to make some adjustments. That isn't so unusual. So certainly we will adhere to the feedback that we receive. We will make the modifications they suggest and refile the prioritization plan. So once that plan is approved by Mass DOT, then the town is eligible to submit projects for funding. So as we mentioned previously, the total amount of the projects cannot exceed $500,000 within a 4-year period of time. So we could submit one project costing $500,000, or we could submit a variety of projects, several projects for the various funding rounds. And as I think it was Scott mentioned, or maybe it was Megan, there are 2 funding rounds each year. So at this point, I'm going to go back to the slide that has the 25 projects. And I'm interested in hearing any feedback that folks might have on these projects. In particular, if folks could let me know what your favorite projects are. In the interest of time, we were thinking that 3 projects would be a good number for folks to call out.
Lori, could I ask a couple of questions?
Of course.
There's not a lot, if anything, on this that directly touches or goes along Route 20. Is that because that's a state highway, or is that because you just didn't identify any projects that?
Yes, state highway projects are not eligible for Complete Streets funding. So that's why they haven't been included.
Okay, unfortunate, but so be it. That answers 3 of my questions. Members of the board, any questions or anything else? Actually, just yell out because I don't see everybody on the screen.
Mitch, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Jason.
Jason Perot. Yeah, Lori, thank you, and Scott for the presentation. I think this is very helpful to understand the various areas in town. As I look at this list again, I think what I'm missing is like some of the estimated dollar figures attached to those. I think just in general, I think I would be inclined to lean toward more smaller projects, a greater number of smaller projects, and encompass a wider scope across town for improvements. But Lori, you were mentioning something like top 3 projects. So I guess I don't know how my initial thought fits in with that.
So one of the things that, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Scott.
Through this, I'm sorry, Kristen, through the chair, Jason. While identifying 3 projects that are viable from a cost perspective is important, there are other funding mechanisms that could be married up with Complete Streets. If you recall, one of the criteria was other fundings as one of the boxes to check. So if there was a project that you liked, for example, Maple Street sidewalk, we all know that's going to be a challenge. If that's ranked high and everybody's interested in it, there's other mechanisms for funding things like that. So it's important for us and DOT to understand that even though it's a costly project, if it's important, it's important.
Yeah, that
Thank
kind
you,
of
Scott.
speaks to what I was going to bring up, that there are a lot of really great ideas on this list, and a lot of them address some of the safety issues that we've been hearing about. I know Allen Street in particular is a terrifying place to walk. I've heard a lot of people say that, and as a driver sometimes down that street, it's definitely a safety issue. It's super important. Maple Street is similar in that it connects, to places where there is a sidewalk to nowhere. So I don't know how involved that would be, but it also would connect a lot of neighborhoods to a school, with an elementary school, and it would connect other neighborhoods to the high school. A lot of high school kids walk down that street every day, going home down Maple Street. So, those are big safety issues. But it seems to me, I was just driving down Hudson Street the other day, and I thought, like, oh, that's right, there's that one little section of Hudson Street that doesn't have a sidewalk, because I walked it in the spring one day, and it doesn't seem like, and I have no idea how involved that one is, but it doesn't seem that long. And it was just like, oh, if we could just fill that in, So, and then the Gale Street, it sounds like you have a lot of ideas for that whole loop, the lighting and the sidewalk, and then the sidewalk on South Street as well. And that might make a good loop, and it would include the town commons. So there's so many really good ideas. But yeah, I think if when we're discussing it, either this time or next time or whenever it makes the most sense, if you all could clue us in on which projects there is other funding for, that might help, right? Anyway, thanks.
Okay, any other members of the board have?
I have a question, Julie.
Julianne.
Has a question. Okay, so one quick one and one longer one. There were no concerns about Brigham Street? Because I hear a lot of complaints about Brigham Street and it being difficult to walk.
That was one of the projects that was identified on the survey. I think it was maybe the 7th.
Okay, so it didn't quite make the cut of 25?
Yeah, there were 69 responses. We could add a Brigham Street project if you wanted to add a new project.
What we did, Julianne, through the chair is marry up a lot of the different pieces of the results and not segmentalize it. So indicating that, you know, we want sidewalks connecting neighborhoods to businesses. We want recreational facilities connected to neighborhoods. We want schools connected. And when you go down Brigham Street, it's a wonderful street. It's a beautiful tree-lined street, but it's a long, narrow street with not a lot of large neighborhoods immediately off of it on the business side of Brigham Street, meaning the Route 20 side. The larger neighborhoods are over on the South Street side, where Milk Porridge is and Sunset, kind of between School and Brigham, as opposed to Collins and Brigham, where there's only one neighborhood off that fairway, really. In Leland. So
okay, and my second question is, and this would go to Lori, I guess, are any of these going to be addressed with the downtown revitalization plan that you might comment on as it might be better to just hold off a little bit? Like I'm thinking Blake Street. What?
So it's really important in order to secure funding for downtown revitalization, that downtown projects receive high priority on the prioritization list. So what I envision is that Complete Streets program will be a source of funding for downtown revitalization. I also anticipate that we will go after some other funding sources, possibly the MassWorks program, possibly the MVP, the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program. We may go after multiple grants for a single project, a single downtown project. So I anticipate that downtown revitalization will be a multi-year, multi-phase project, and it'll be a very, very expensive project. So that's part of the consideration. One of the great things about downtown revitalization is that a single project can knock off many of those evaluation criteria. So of course you have access to stores, you have access to neighborhoods, you have access to low-income housing, of course, municipal services, the disabled folks. So absolutely, downtown projects should be on the list, and ideally I'd like to see them highly ranked. And I do anticipate Complete Streets grants being part of the funding mechanism.
So, but now I'm thinking about, say, for example, Blake Street. We don't know what's happening with 4 West Main Street, which is right next to it, right? And it just seems like we might make Blake Street beautiful and then not, and then it doesn't work with whatever the plan is for 4 West Main.
You know, it's really important to think of the public realm improvements as a catalyst for change. So a lot of times what happens is the private sector that own the parcels, possibly along Blake Street or Pierce Street, they'll get excited because they see that something's happening. They're seeing that the town cares about this particular area and is willing to invest a huge amount of money in making it look better. So if you think about the streetscape improvements in downtown Worcester, that's a perfect example. So the streetscape improvements came first, and then the private investment came after that. So I suspect that the same thing could happen here. So of course the town can't control the private properties. Those are private properties that the property owners will do with as they please. So what do we have control over? We have control over the public realm. So why not start there?
That's a great explanation. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other members of the board? Again, I can't see everybody's screen, so just yell out, please. I do see a couple of hands raised in the audience. We'll definitely get to those in a minute or two.
Can I, Mitch,
Kristen,
can I
of course.
say one more
Absolutely.
thing? So, or it's sort of a question. So my Hudson Street idea, finishing off that sidewalk, would that be considered a downtown related project because it would connect to downtown, or is it too far away from downtown?
Absolutely, I would consider it a downtown project.
Okay, thanks.
One question, oh, I'm sorry, Jason, did you have something?
Oh, no, why don't you go ahead, Mitch? I'll follow up after.
All right, thank you. The Aqueduct Trail that was mentioned, is that the same item as what I hear as the Bewalt Trail that other towns are doing, that people are on I think either side of Northborough, with the idea of connecting a bike trail or a multi-use trail through Northborough to other towns?
Yes, there is an initiative to connect the entire aqueduct as it goes through several communities. So one of the interesting things is we could actually pursue a Mass Trails grant. And if you are doing a project that benefits multiple communities, it's a regional scale project, then you're eligible to apply for up to $400,000 in grant funds. So that's another example of a project that may not be a great complete streets project because of course there's only $500,000 in funding. But it's a great project to rank high on our prioritization plan because absolutely there is interest in pursuing grant funding through the Mass Trails grant.
Great. Are you interested in getting the top three from the board right now? Where we could go around?
I am interested in hearing, yeah, I mean, just people can shout out, whoever is interested, who wants to share an opinion about what their top projects are. We're happy to collect that information. And of course, I just wanted to state once again that there are a number of prioritization criteria, and the public outreach component is one of those prioritization criteria, but we're not going to be ranking projects simply on you know, what people shout out this evening, but it will be one of the factors that we consider.
Thank you. Jason, you had something before I spoke up.
Yes, Mr. Chair, to respond to Lori's invitation, I think as I look at this, I mean, obviously there are many good projects here, but if I have to try to settle on some high level criteria to narrow down the choices, I think my criteria would be something in the vicinity of downtown, such as the Gale Street and perhaps the related South Street sidewalk areas, to kind of knit that together and to provide some access to like Aspet Playground and the town common. And then, you know, without expressing a particular preference, probably some of the sidewalk work in the vicinity of the schools would be my next choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
I actually have a quick question regarding sidewalks in schools, and it's a question I don't think there's anyone here that knows the answer to, but perhaps the answer might help rank these later, is whether if we add sidewalks near schools to connect more neighborhoods, whether the school department and school committees would then be interested in having more walkers to school, less buses, and lower operational costs on that end. And that's, again, something that there's no one here equipped to know the answer to that.
Through the chair, if I may, we have
sure.
we've got to run the buses, whether or not there's 2 kids on it or 30 kids on it. So it won't have an operational reduction in terms of busing. The busing, we're legally required to provide busing. It might be a healthier alternative to see more kids walking, and with parents, maybe that's a positive thing, but operationally, I don't think it'll have an impact.
Yeah, well, kids that are within a certain distance from a school, we're not obligated legally unless there's no safe way to get there. And that's my question. I mean, I have no problem if the school committee wants to, for safety reasons or other reasons, bus all the kids. You know, that's their decision. I support that. That's the only reason I brought that up. Thank you, John.
Can I ask one more question?
Of course.
Does anyone have data on how, and I can't imagine that you would, but maybe there is, on numbers of walkers on any of these proposals? Like, for example, does Allen Street get more walkers than River Street?
Are you asking from a school perspective?
No,
or-
just general, you know, how do we see more walkers on Allen Street? And I'm just picking those randomly.
You know, I suspect, because of course, remember we asked the survey question about what are your impediments to walking? And the number one, I think there were 600 and some odd responses. They said the number one impediment to walking is the lack of sidewalks. So I suspect that people are not walking on these streets that don't have sidewalks because they don't feel comfortable doing so. And there could be a variety of reasons for that. You know, maybe the traffic goes too fast. That was a response that several people checked off on. You know, maybe it's, you know, not an attractive walk, or maybe it's because it's not going anywhere. There could be a number of reasons for that, but I would not necessarily think that the fact that there aren't people walking on Maple Street, and maybe there are, I don't know that one way or the other. But just because there aren't people walking there doesn't mean that there isn't the interest in walking there.
Okay, thank you.
Would anyone else like to give a top 3 in some form? I'm sure, Lori, you'd be happy to take them after the meeting if members want to think about it a little bit more.
Absolutely. People can certainly email me. You know, people who are watching this evening or want to watch on the playback and want to chime in, I'd be happy to collect your responses.
I'll give my top 3, which are a little bit combined in some ways. So for the downtown area, the Blake Street and Pierce Street, they're so interconnected that I almost would consider them one project. You know, implementation probably shouldn't happen until we give some more thought to downtown, but starting to get those on the list is important. There's so much opportunity there, both the downtown study, what becomes of the current fire station after we move down to West Main Street, et cetera. We have tremendous opportunity to do a lot of good there. And my biggest pet peeve on your list is the little gap on Hudson Street right near Trinity Church. I have walked that little gap along the tiny little, you wouldn't even call it a breakdown lane, that 2-foot wide gap between the white line and the berm many times. I'd love to see a sidewalk in there. So that would be number 1 for me. Next would be South Street with the shared arrows, the bike lane that would get you all the way from downtown towards Ellsworth McAfee. And I would, again, combine, just due to proximity, the sidewalk, a little stretch of sidewalk that needs to be rebuilt near downtown on South Street. And number 3 to me would be that Aqueduct Trail. And I love the idea of what you mentioned of get it on the priority list, but seek separate grant funding. So we're not eating into the Complete Streets grant funding with this. But I could easily be convinced all of these are important. There's nothing that I'm looking at here that say I really don't want to do it. It's hard to look at a big list of 20 or 25 items and really prioritize them. But that's what I've got.
Thank you.
And it makes sense for me to go next, Mitch, because my thinking was along the same lines, is that I found myself wanting to combine Blake and Pierce to get that bit. Similarly, the Hudson Street gap, needs to be closed. And then I also looking for the shared arrows along South Street. And if that can be combined with that bit of the sidewalk on South Street to improve the access to Aspet, I was thinking along exactly the same lines.
Thank you.
All right. We've got a long list of members of the public that want to chime in. Anybody else want to speak up before I start letting folks in? Okay. I'll ask members of the audience to keep your comments reasonably brief and let us know of your top priorities or any critical questions that you've got. First, who raised the hand? Amy Paretsky. Amy, letting you talk now.
Oh, sure. Thanks. This is a great presentation. It's a lot of great projects. It's kind of like a birthday wish where you could have everything on that list. If you could, you'd want them all. But I go along with a lot of things that you guys already said. I would love to see the downtown streets all in one group with Gale Street, Blake, Pierce, the small Hudson Street. I think that's like a downtown group of streets. My second one would be the Maple Street. I feel that it is dangerous because kids are walking to school there, and there are a lot of new drivers. Like I live over in Indian Meadows, so I know my kids drove that every day to school, and I was always like, go slow, watch out, there are kids walking there. So as a new driver or a walker, I always thought that was a dangerous street. And my third one would be the Aqueduct Trail, because I think that would give safe biking and walking to all residents in Northborough, and it would be accessible to all. I'm actually against the Sharrows on South Street. I would love to connect downtown to 135, but I think the Sharrows are dangerous. I would never drive on the street or tell my kids to drive on 135 with just painted arrows there. And I've done some research that there are a lot of towns, even like Boston is putting in barriers because it's dangerous for the bikes and the cars to be mixed together. And that street is so narrow and the cars drive fast and people are on their phone and the trucks are always there and the dump trucks and the trash trucks. I just feel like mixing cars and bikes on South Street would be an accident waiting to happen. But thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Next on the list, Chris. I'm going to mess up your name again. Dieselitis.
Close enough. Diachetis.
Thank you.
This was a really interesting presentation, very well put together. One question I did have, was there any consideration given to the intersection of Hudson and Allen, right when you come around like the Aqueduct Bridge there? It's kind of, a lot of drivers come fast around that corner and there's very minimal sight distance as you come under the bridge, which is obviously historic. So it kind of throws a wrench into that as well. So it just makes it a little difficult, a little scary to cross, especially when you're going to walk along the aqueduct. And I'd assume with the Aqueduct Trail, if that ever went into place, it definitely would see a lot more walkers down Allen Street, across that intersection and onto the new trail. So I just kind of wanted to get an idea if anything was considered about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
I'm gonna toss that over to Scott. Scott, do you have any comments about that intersection?
Yeah, that is a challenging corridor, as everybody knows. The sidewalk meanders to the adjacent structural bay from the roadway bay. The sidewalk on Allen Street will allow that connectivity that we described. The aqueduct trail, on the other hand, will circumvent that whole area in that it picks up on Rice Ave, goes across the aqueduct over toward East Main Street, then across East Main Street and along down the aqueduct. So if both those projects were to go forward, the Allen Street sidewalk and the aqueduct trail, the aqueduct trail would pull people off of Allen Street sidewalk in that they would have a more scenic route from Rice Ave to East Main Street. In that if you walk down Rice Ave, you pop across the aqueduct trail, you run over to the Memorial and Casey Field. So if both projects went forward, we would actually kind of subdivide out the pedestrians through that area.
Thank you, Scott. Next up, we have Kelly Gannett. Kelly.
Thank you. I would love to see the priority being around safety versus something that's aesthetic or the downtown, revitalization type thing. One of the questions you guys had about is for buses. And although John is correct, it wouldn't necessarily cut down the operational budgets. One thing it would do is potentially consolidate bus stops. So it would be shorter bus stop routes. I know there are Davis Street, particularly, I know firsthand that there are stops that have to be created because the kids aren't supposed to be crossing the main road and they can't walk down that side of the street because there's no sidewalk. So they have to add stops in front of people's houses on that street. So things like that might actually do help the buses in that sense. And then the only other question I would have is, I know, for example, the Davis Street, you were stopping at Hamilton versus going all the way up to Northgate. So questions I would have would be, is that then going to be a potential in the next few years being like, oh, wait, we should have just gone that extra, quarter mile and just completed it, which seems like is why we have some gaps along the way on other areas and other neighborhoods. So I would hate for you guys to invest in that part and then miss the opportunity to just finish it up the whole way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kelly.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Bill Pierce. Hi, Bill.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having me. I'll make my comments really brief. I know myself and the DPW head have swapped emails about Whitney Street. To match what Kelly just said, as well as Mitch, what you mentioned earlier, at the beginning of this year, my children were actually originally set to get off a bus stop on Stone, which is behind my house. And we had to convince this school to drop them off in front of my house because there is no sidewalk to walk from Babcock down to our house. There is a half-hearted sidewalk that's been left for many years and not attended to. But I would also say on Whitney Street, if you go, and I'm curious why this wasn't on the list, about maybe a couple lots down from Washburn, the sidewalk ends, and that turn on Washburn is a blind corner that people are taking at 35 miles an hour without a lot of room. The sidewalk does not pick up again until just before Treetop. So I would think that's a pretty large gap with a safety issue there. Where you don't have any room on Whitney, and I see lots of people walking their dogs every morning down that road. So I'd be curious why that wasn't on the list. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. Just on that note, I guess a suggestion to the DPW, and we don't have to talk about it now, but Bill brought it up. There are some areas in town, such as the area where Bill is, that have what are essentially abandoned sidewalks that were put in at a time, I think, before the town was getting proper easements and things like that. So the town has abandoned them. I think the town should decide one way or another how to deal with those rather than let them fall apart. Either go through the process, which I know is complicated, to go ahead and get the easements and rebuild the sidewalks, or at least pull up what's there if the town put it down in the first place, so that it's, it could just be grass instead. Only bringing that up because that was related to the earlier comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure. Next up, Ashley Davies. Ashley, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for letting me speak tonight. So Ashley Davies, 168 South Street. I did want to chime in about some things that I would like as top priorities, but I just wanted to mention, because I live on South Street, I feel pretty strongly about the shared arrows. I know there are people that do bike on the road, and I would love for it to be safer for them. I think they usually choose early morning on the weekends when there's not as much traffic, but living on South Street, on the side of the street, that would likely be the place where the shared arrows went in. I just feel like it's probably a pretty impractical project. We probably have a very large price tag. I know in front of my house, there would probably have to be a retaining wall. There's a lot of ledge. There's some really dangerous corners. So just curious about kind of what kind of due diligence was done to see what that would cost. And I just think it's maybe a really large project that maybe isn't worth its weight. But I did want to say, for me, top priorities are a lot of the downtown projects: Gale, Hudson, Blake, Pierce, and of course the Aqueduct multi-use trail. But that's it. Those are my 2 cents. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ashley.
Mr.
Yeah,
Chair,
sure.
Just to clarify a little bit about Sharrows and bike lanes. So bike lane is a dedicated lane that runs along the roadway edge for cyclists only. Vehicles are not allowed in bike lanes. Sharrows are shared lanes where vehicles and bicycles coexist, which is currently what the case is throughout town. Bicycles are vehicles, they're roadway vehicles, they belong on the road, not on sidewalks. So a sharrow is shared. It's a mechanism to improve the driver's knowledge that there's likely going to be bicycles on this road, and they would be on each side of the road. Cyclists aren't supposed to drive against traffic; they're supposed to ride with traffic. So you would have sharrows on each side of South Street, and it would serve as a reminder to drivers of cars and vehicles that there may be a bicycle on this route because they're often here. Just to clarify a little bit.
Yeah, I think bike riders, if they don't see some kind of signage on the road as to where to ride, tend to try to veer all the way off to the right and ride right against the sidewalk or whatever the side of the road is. And then drivers try to squeeze in to the left of them. And my hope is something like this, people would recognize you're all taking up the full lane, and there are pros and cons of that, but it should be safer. Is that how you think it might go?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Scott.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Sure, of course.
If we could I just wonder if Scott could comment on the price for that project, because it seemed that Ashley had the impression that it was a fairly expensive undertaking, and I took it to be that it really doesn't consist much markings in the roadway to alert drivers and bicyclists.
Through the chair, Jason's correct. It's primarily pavement markings. There are often portal improvements. So if you would have in this case we don't, but if you would have bump outs at a destination for a cyclist, you'd likely remove that bump out so the cyclist isn't forced further toward the double yellow center line. But there is no roadway widening, no box widening when it comes to a sharrow project. It's primarily pavement markings and driver awareness improvements.
I assume we don't have either the width or the to go ahead and actually put in a formal separate bike lane or the cost would be astronomical for that.
Yeah, that's why we have bike lanes shown on Barefoot and Bartlett. We have adequate pavement width where there isn't pavement width, but there is right away, and no slope concerns. You can always do a box widening, which we discussed previously in small sections along Bartlett Street would be required, specifically around like the Cedar Hill intersection. The pavement kind of necks down a little bit. So that's a small box widening, but the grades there are accommodated.
Thank you. Next, we have George Brankel. Come on in, George. If you could unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
We do.
Oh, okay. If I had to pick my top three, they would be Allen Street, Allen Street, and Allen Street. I do a lot of walking in town, and if I ever get hit by a car in Northborough, it's going to be on Allen Street. So that's an area I would love to see East Main Street connected with Hudson Street. That's it.
Thank
you. Thank you, George.
It's really going to take.
And next we have Lisa Maselli.
Good evening, Mitch and company. Thank you for having the public comments tonight. I think this was a great presentation, and I have a few questions. First off, on the Complete Streets plan, where we're looking at 25 projects, are you planning on only doing 1 or 2 projects a year? You can only use a $500,000 of the grant money for the Complete Streets. So would Chapter 90 funds and ARPA funds also be applied so that we can get more than 1 or 2 projects done a year? And if that be the case, what is the timeline for these 25 projects or more, such as Whitney? What would that be? The second question is, what materials are usually used for these sidewalks? I looked at the sidewalk design guidelines today, and you can do bituminous cement or granite curbing. They do have a 6-inch vertical curb that they recommend. And I'm finding that personally, we use our sidewalks for more than walking. We use it for parking. I have pictures of many people or vehicles parked on these sidewalks, and the bituminous get beat up pretty quickly with the plows or the heavy trucks or the landscape vehicles. We've even got DPW trucks, and we've got the postman who parks on the curbs or the sidewalks quite often. So I'm hoping that we can start to enforce this parking, as it's illegal in Massachusetts. And then the third question I have is, how many feet from center does the town own? I thought it was about 20 feet from center. I may be wrong, but that land that we own has a certain amount of eminent domain that we're required to allow the town to make easements on. I know my house was taken. I made $60 to be able to have a sidewalk built in front of my house. And I know that is something else that, unless it's changed, unless we no longer have that footage and easements, that we should be able to not have too many problems with getting those sidewalks in, because they benefit the entire town and the safety and the desire for walking.
All right, first question. Number of projects that we anticipate doing each year will depend on funding that is available, as well as the cost of particular projects. So what I would like to see in the downtown is I would like to see concrete sidewalks, certainly with either vertical, ideally vertical granite curb. But in a suburban design, you typically see bituminous sidewalks. And the reason for that is bituminous sidewalks are a lot cheaper. And it's also, you're going to be able to get more bang for your buck with a bituminous sidewalk than you are with a concrete sidewalk. So generally you see the concrete sidewalks in areas where there's shopping and downtown. And so as far as the width of the right of way, that also varies. So it depends on how the roadway was originally constructed, whether it's a 40-foot right of way or whether it's a 50-foot right of way. And there really is no guarantee as far as, you know, the edge of the roadway within the width, the paved roadway within the width of the right of way. Because in some cases, where the roadway exists meanders, especially if the roadways are older. So they may not have placed, let's assume it's a 20-foot roadway. They may not have put the paved width of the roadway directly within the center of the right of way. And also the width of the roadway, the paved width, varies depending upon the size of the project. If you're talking about a small cul-de-sac that has 5 houses on it, that roadway, chances are, is significantly narrower than you would find on Route 20. So the best way to determine where the paved width exists within the right of way is to do a survey. There's no way to say it's going to be this without a survey. And did I miss a question?
I think you've got it, Lori.
Okay.
Thank you very much for answering those. Yeah, and just, you know, on the timing, you know, I think we'd love to do most or all of these. We're going to do them bit by bit, and it's impossible to predict how long it would take and what the sources of funding are. Next, Evan Morona, I'm going to bring you in.
Hi, guys. Thanks so much for putting this together this evening. This is an awesome presentation. For our top 3, I would say definitely Maple Street would be number 1. We also recognize that Allen Street is a nightmare. And also the downtown area also needs to be addressed. I have a question just regarding what like the overall priority is going to be on these issues. Are they going to be by like safety hazards versus nice to haves, want to haves, need to haves? I'm just curious as what the board's priority, how that lies. Thank you.
The priorities really are articulated by the Complete Streets program. So like I said, they like projects that benefit all users, incomes, and abilities. So in this case, projects that would improve access to housing authority properties or low-income properties, to those who, you know, if you had senior housing, that would be an example. Projects that enhance, create a safe route to school, links neighborhoods to shopping and recreation, addresses gaps, ADA accessibility improvements, benefits public health and the environment. So these are things that the Complete Streets program has already told us. These are the types of projects that they will fund. So the projects that are top on the list are going to be the ones that check the most boxes.
And that's for this particular grant process to get as much of the $500,000 that we can get. And that doesn't mean it's necessarily the most important for the town. For example, I think a lot of us would probably want to do some things along Route 20. We can't with this grant program. That's going to be a different path. So those aren't eligible, et cetera.
Correct. There may be projects that are on the capital improvement plans that are very important projects, but they may be ranked high on that list, but low on this list because they simply don't qualify for grant funding.
Thank you, Laurie. That exhausts the members of the public that have raised their hands. If there are other members of the board or staff members that that want to ask anything additional, say anything additional.
Mitch, if I may, John.
Hi.
Hi. I don't have trouble seeing everybody on the screen. Just a little bit of context here. These are great planning tools, and whenever you develop a wish list of any kind, it's always going to exceed, available resources. The nice thing about this is it helps us identify priority projects, and when possible, we can match them up with grant funding. But just in terms of context, a couple of points to make. Those of you who've been on the board or served on a board or committee for many years in this town, you know that one of our top, if not our top legislative priority for the last probably 7 or 8 years has been an increase at the state level for Chapter 90 funding. The town of Northborough only gets a little over $500,000, about $550,000 a year from the state for roadway improvements. Now, to that, we have about another $300,000 in the operating budget, and then we put another $300,000 in typically use of free cash. So in total, for roadway work and sidewalk work right now, the town budgets on an annual basis $1.1 million. We know that that number probably needs to be increased by about another $1 million a year. So it's always a struggle to maintain what you have and then build and enhance where you would like to. But just again, in terms of context, we've recently completed a sidewalk master plan analysis, which just like we did for our roadways about 6 or 7 years ago, is an assessment of every single existing sidewalk in town. And we know that sitting here today, we have about $1.5 million in road and sidewalk work from existing sidewalks that need to be fixed and repaired. Now, Northborough isn't like we're in better shape than most. We know that our overall pavement condition index is about a 71 out of 100. More importantly, we know by spending $1.1 million every year that we're maintaining that. We're not really making a lot of improvement, but we're sort of stemming the bleeding. So there is an excessive amount, as it is, again, this is nothing unique to Northborough, but there's a backlog of roadway work and sidewalkway work that exists. And so like this program here, I think as Lori and Scott have pointed out, we're identifying projects, enhancements that would be eligible for grant funding. And the comment was made, well, we can always use local funding as well. Well, that's true. But again, this funding has to come from a limited pot of money, which is why we have been lobbying the state significantly and heavily for the last 6 or 7 years to increase that Chapter 90 funding. It's absolutely critical that recurring state funding gets enhanced. And then to the extent possible, we would like to grow our maintenance budget for our roadways and our sidewalks on an annual operating basis, but it's a zero-sum game in terms of resources and taxes, so trying to balance all of that. So the purpose for the comments are to give some context and to also to manage expectations that we're not going to do these 25 projects in the next 5 years. And in fact, we have a number of projects that don't show up on this list because this is the Complete Streets program. We have an exhaustive list of sidewalks that need work as well all throughout town. So again, just trying to moderate expectations. And again, for those of you that might be tuning into this for the first time, this is not new. This discussion is not new. And this information is stuff that we have, the capital planning or the financial planning committee and the appropriations committee have been looking at in depth for probably the last 10 years. So again, just want to manage those expectations and understand that we are going to do things in priority order. And part of that is making sure that we know what the priorities are to begin with. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other questions from or comments from members of the board or staff? Again, please yell out. I can't see everyone. Sorry, sorry, Julianne, go ahead.
So what is the next step now? Could you review that again?
Sure. So after this, what we're gonna do, so town staff, so that's me and Scott and the town engineer, as well as our consultant team from Woodard and Curran, are going to go through this list of projects and we're gonna rank them. So we're gonna put them through the evaluation criteria that was identified on the prior slide. And we're gonna come up with a list of projects in order of priority. So then we're gonna take that list and we're gonna come back to you. We're gonna tell you what we decided to do as far as the ranking is concerned. And so you're going to have another opportunity to go through the list, and hopefully you will give us the blessing to then submit the prioritization plan to Mass DOT for approval. So they'll go through our list, they'll make sure that it gels with you know, what their priorities are, and then ideally they will give us the approval. And once we get that approval, we will be eligible to submit projects for grant funding. So that's the $500,000 within a 4-year time frame. That's the maximum we can get.
And when you come back to us with your list, will that be a public meeting also? Will that be open for public comment?
Sure. Certainly, you know, I understand that folks pretty much are able to comment on the agenda items, so absolutely. It is important to note, though, is that we have to make sure that we're complying with the complete streets prioritization criteria, since this is their plan, their prioritization plan.
Right. Okay.
But there will be, you know, some wiggle room.
Okay, thank you. And you said that because I just can't think of my top 3 right now, we can email you?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Lori, I have a question. I'm aware of some grant programs that you improve your chances if you propose something that's shovel ready, if you will, something that's already been designed and the boundaries have been figured out, and anything else that you're ready to go. For example, just picking the first one just because it's the top of the list alphabetically, the Allen Street new sidewalk, if we decided that was a real top priority, do we improve our chances if we do some of the legwork on that ahead of time using non-grant money or some other source of funds?
Sorry for interrupting. Absolutely. This grant program only funds shovel-ready projects. So there are some projects on here that don't require any engineering, like obviously the townwide bike rack project. But most of these projects do require engineering, and that engineering will have to be funded by either another grant program or municipal resources.
Good to know. That's very, very important to know. Thank you very much, Laurie.
Mr. Chair.
Jason.
Thank you. I had a question. If I saw it correctly, or if I recall it correctly, the $500,000 was described as like a rolling 4-year period. And so my question is, in year 5, do we get to reapply for whatever we expended in year 1?
So that's kind of an unknown commodity at this point, because as everybody knows, we are going to be losing our governor soon, and there's going to be a new governor. So usually what happens when there's a new governor is there's a shakeup in the various funding programs. Some funding programs remain, some remain but are renamed, and others go away completely. So at this point, I'm not clear, nobody's clear what's going to happen to the Complete Streets program long term. The way it's been operating since it was originally begun is that once you go through that 4-year program, then you are eligible for a competitive grant program. So it's a separate pool of money that communities are eligible to apply for once they've reached their cap. and that period of time has expired.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Okay, anybody have anything else to add? Everyone, thank you very, very much. This has it's been a great project to go through thus far, and I see great things coming out of it, and really appreciate the time that you, Lori, Scott from DPW, and Megan have put into this, in addition to all the other town staff that I know have helped out with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your attention and your patience as we went through this lengthy process. So I really appreciate it. The feedback has been very helpful.
And Lord, just if maybe to chair, we just make sure the presentation is up on the website tomorrow so people can review it and see the details, refresh their memories from what was reviewed tonight.
Absolutely. We will put that on the planning department page.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Lori. Okay. Next up on our agenda, we have ARPA. So I'll kick this off with a couple of general comments. So a few months back, we had a fantastic public input section where we got a lot of ideas from the public and suggestions as to what to do with the more than $4 million we've received from the federal government through the ARPA project. It's taken a little bit of time and we also received continuously a lot of additional requests via an email that was set up. So after a few months of that, I think it's a good time for us to start to talk about the process. We have a lengthy list. I forget exactly how many, something around 75 or 80 items that are on the list that Julianne assembled without priority order or anything like that. And that's in the agenda packet. We had not yet talked about exactly how we're going to talk through this. We can go through it and talk about every single item. We can go through half of them tonight and half in another meeting. In theory, if we spend 1 minute on each one, we're going to be here for an hour and a half. I don't know if that's a good use of of everyone's waking time tonight. Whatever it is okay. I just want us to start to work on this so we can start to develop some priorities. And for many of these items, John and his staff will have to do some work to come back to us with recommendations or cost estimates or anything else. And there may be other committees and other departments involved or outside groups involved to give us some more information. So this is a first pass. A lot of people have asked, how much money are we going to be giving away tonight? My hope is zero. I don't think that that's appropriate at this stage, but we need to get there. So that's about that. Julianne, would you mind just telling us about how you put the list together and the items that you went through? I know you went through the public meeting and emails and everything else.
I just simply went to 3 major sources, which was our emails, the community forum that was held at the church, and then our June 16th meeting where people offered ideas. And I also added a couple of things that were brought to me directly, like the plaques and benches. There was another one, but I'm glad that you gave me the opportunity to speak because one of the items that I listed was economic development or something like that, and economic is spelled incorrectly, so I apologize for that. But the other thing I did not include, which you may or may not want still up for discussion, was hiring a consultant. That was offered by a resident, but I know we had a discussion previously about not doing that. So if you want to reopen that, that's, I guess, up for discussion also. And one more thing, there was another one that came in Friday after I submitted the list, and that was for the beacon lights. So like stop signs that might benefit from the lights around them. And I think that's it.
Thank you very much, Julianne. Thank you again for putting this together. And I'll also add that the list also includes all of the items that town administrator recommended to the board back before we had our public input meeting. I think it's important that everybody knows we've included everything. Everything is a lot. We didn't want to discount anything without having to go through a public discussion process. If no one has any other ideas, I think what I'm going to do is just list them, list one, and see if anyone has any comments or questions. And a lot of these, most of these items don't even have dollar figures, because when we get them in, sometimes people don't have dollar amounts. We'll work through that. Scott, you had your hand up.
Yeah, Mitch, before going into the list, I think it would be a benefit to conduct an iteration on this list to get a more accurate and contextual tabulation of the items. Many of the items here, just from the two words, I can't recall what they relate to. And so instead, if we had a tabulation, would have been straightforward to do from the emails, right? We know what data came in, who it came from, it came via email, this was the title, this was the description. A more complete tabulation on that would give us the ability in context to know what form it came from, who made the request, when it was made, and that will help us, recall what these items are. I have a feeling if we were to go through tonight through these items one by one, it would take very long. Yeah. We'll find the duplicates that are there now, the omissions that are there now. And so I think it would be a better use of time to take this, get a more complete tabulation, and then use that. And I think this is something that I don't know if this is an item you and Julianne would be willing to do, is there's an opportunity to then categorize these items, right? To segment into, these are elements of community wellness, these are elements of capital planning, these are elements of social and human services, whatever they are. There's an opportunity to then identify which town department would be responsible for implementing that. And then we could be able to group those together and say, oh, this is an assembly of recreational department elements. This is an assembly of health and human services. But if we'd be willing to, take that, those steps to make it a more accurate tabulation, that I think that would be really helpful.
I'm open to anything the board is interested in doing it to spend this money the best way possible. Kristen, it's great that I can see everyone's hands again, by the way.
Yeah, I was just looking at it, and some of these things I think we already authorized, right? Like the Proctor roof. Didn't we vote on that already? And the $100,000 for
Be Well. Yeah, everything is on.
Well, and the pickleball alternates and the fence and stuff like that. So that's where I find the list a little bit confusing, because some of the things are already, we've already done, right? And then some of the things have a dollar amount and we haven't done. And then some of them don't have a dollar amount. Like Cultural Council didn't say like how much money they might want or what project they might want money for. Whereas like Community Meals said $40,000, which was really helpful. So, and also Family and Youth Services gave an amount, which is helpful. And also there was the senior center or something connected to the senior center. There was a certain dollar amount I remember seeing too. So, yeah, so I feel like if we just go through the entire list right now, it's I don't know. I find that kind of confusing too, to be honest.
Yeah. Can't disagree with any comments. Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think I share the same concern. I think that I had anticipated that the result was going to be a summary that was, somewhat more categorized, maybe eliminate some duplication. I think there's something like half a dozen different line items here that relate to support for local businesses, but there isn't any of the context that accompanied those submissions to be able to distinguish exactly what the differences are among those line items. And so I'm just finding it difficult. What I find myself having to do is to refer back to the submitted emails or refer back to the public input session just to remind myself what the particular request was for. So I think I would agree. I think that there's another iteration needed here to consolidate and flesh out the information so that we do have something that is a concise reference, but a complete enough reference for us to even understand what the several requests are, to refer to it and to have the discussion.
Sure. Julianne and I did talk about the idea of categorizing and to some extent removing things that are very, very closely related. Whether they be duplicates or not is up to interpretation. What I didn't want to do without consulting the full board first is to do some of that, because sometimes that can imply some favoritism among the items, or some even accidentally put something in some order or some category that might be interpreted as something that we like or something we don't like. So I wanted to be very careful before the first iteration of that. Obviously, we'll be as careful as we can with that. I can't speak for Julianne, but I'm certainly open to doing that. We want to have a fruitful discussion and a fruitful conclusion of how we spend these funds. I'm hearing from the board that we should do a little bit more work, and I'm happy to do that. Julianne, are you willing to?
Yeah, well, we did have that talk, and I appreciate that you just wanted to get the list out there so that there was no subjectivity involved in categorizing. But I think it does make sense, and I think we can do a good job. But the other kind of category that I think we have to discuss also is time. Some of these have more imperative needs, immediate needs than others. Like the community meal program is going to run out of money in 3 weeks or something. So that's another layer, not even another category. And also there's another factor that plays into this, and that would be, are there any other sources of money that should be considered as we're discussing these projects, such as CPC, such as downtown, any kind of, downtown grants. So, yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah. I mean, just like the list of the projects that we went through in the earlier agenda item, I think we would probably love to do almost all of these, but we have to go through some work. And where Complete Streets gives a lot of structure to making that happen, we're just given a big pot of money and told to spend it, and we have to complete our own structure to make that happen. Scott?
Well, I would say we're not given a big pot of money and told just to spend it. What we should do is identify unmet community needs.
Yeah.
Once those needs are identified, then determine what the proper funding source is. For some of those, that'll be ARPA. So, once again, I don't want you to summarize and lose the details of what the input said. I want you to accurately tabulate everything that has come in, so we have all those details. We'll find that all those detailed items assemble into certain areas, and that'll allow us to group things and prioritize effectively. But it's been said in a few public forums, this is not a whimsical application of windfall funding. This is community needs that need to go through our established processes and procedures to be vetted out. And you see the results of when something goes through proper procedures in the Complete Streets, a very nice detailed set of 25 projects. That's how this town operates. And that's what we need to do the same on this ARPA funding. We had an opportunity to collect this public input in a very structured manner, and we didn't. And now that's why we have a list today that doesn't have any of the details that we collected. So we need to tabulate the details that were collected, get that out in front of us, and then we'll have something to discuss.
Sure. So I'm fine going ahead and skipping the discussion on the details of this and coming back at a meeting as soon as possible with a tabulated list. That's fine. Jason?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One other thing that crossed my mind as I was looking at these, right, is that although we solicited the public input, the public, may not have had a full appreciation of the implications of some of the proposals. So for instance, some of them are clearly one-time expenditures and don't have any, forward obligation beyond that. Others seem to imply some acquisition of facilities or ongoing maintenance of operations or facilities to provide that service. And I think that's a significant distinction that we need to make in evaluating some of the proposals.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, at the public input forum, we made mention of that we are allowed to spend, for example, money on operating expenditures, but there are additional things that we need to think about with that if we're committing to hiring a salaried employee, that we're really committing to doing that long-term beyond the life of the grant. So we'll obviously have to put some categories on those as well. Probably some check marks that we'll put on each sheet.
So one of the things that would be helpful to me, or if Mitch and I are working on this, is if you would all reach out to the groups that you are liaison to, like for example, community affairs. I don't think anyone is liaison to Historical Society, but those groups, might have done fundraising or solicitation of funds, and they lost that opportunity during COVID. And it would be helpful if you reached out to your group and asked if they, if they're aware of this, and if they do want to submit something. But the other thing is also, it's it is an amount of money that we're probably never going to see again, just given to us in our lifetime. So there, from what I've been reading, there isn't really a definitive roadmap like there is for Complete Streets. It is going to take more work from all of us. So I just wanted to kind of make that clear.
Kristen.
Yeah, so I wanted to say thank you for all this extra work, and I would volunteer myself or Jason or Scott to help, but then I realized then we have an open meeting law problem. So, and I'm sure Jason and Scott wouldn't mind me volunteering them at all. But anyway, I did want to ask. So there are some things that are clear that we would need town staff to help get the work done once the money is appointed for that project. But there are other things that don't. So I guess that's something, if you're going to make your list more specific, can you put that in? Because some of the things are lightening the load of town staff, whereas some things are like, oh, we would need someone from town staff to help make that.
Yeah. I mean, any of those things need to have be part of the conversation, because we're not just, for some of these, we're writing a check, if you will. For many of them, probably most of them, town staff need to actually implement something to make it happen.
Right.
So that's absolutely we need input from town. So one of the things that, if we were to go through, in any case, once we go through the items and develop some level of priority, that can then give some direction to John and his staff for providing additional information on those items, where if we say none of us are strongly in favor of a particular item, John doesn't need to spend any time on it. But if many of us are in favor of a particular item, we really want to learn more, or we might consider funding this, then it does make sense for staff to fill in the blanks and let us know what are some of the ancillary costs that might not be readily apparent. Is the cost estimate reasonable that's been provided by the group or committee? Or if nothing has been provided, what is that? So
One other thing, I just was gonna say, I can reach out to the Historical Society.
Oh,
I'd
good.
be happy to do that part of it.
Yes, they did submit that they, had lost revenue during the pandemic, but they didn't give an
Yeah.
amount. So that'd be really helpful.
I actually talked to them about it in the summer a little bit. I met with a bunch of the people from the Historical Society that on something else. And they were definitely I think they could probably come up with a number, so I'll send some emails.
Scott.
Yeah, let me use that as a pivot, right? So during our input session, Historical Society called in with 2 very specific projects, right? And they had outlined exactly what they needed on those 2 projects. So I think in needing to solicit more from boards, committees, commissions, and departments, I think we already did. And in fact, that was done early in this process. And since that time, departments have come up with annual budgets for this year and things like that. So I think we're adding to the confusion to go out and beat the bushes more and retread what's already been done in many cases. If you haven't already had these discussions with the committees that you're liaisons to, I mean, we did last year, but please do. But really, it's if that hasn't already been communicated to the associated departments in town and the staff of those committees, I don't know what's been happening for the last year or so. I mean, so that confuses me quite a bit, and so that's why I use the Historical Society. They called in, right, and the gentleman told us 2 very specific projects. I don't see it on the list here.
The Historical Society, they're not a board or a committee though, Scott, so they don't have a lead.
No, but I mean, they called in, right, and we have those details. Then,
yeah, Scott, I tend to agree with you that I think we've done our work of outreach. I'm very happy we did that, and I am very satisfied with the results of that outreach. I don't think we need to formally do any more at this point. There's certainly a number of people watching the meeting. I think I see at least one member of the Historical Society in the attendees list tonight. So I think they'll get the message even without additional outreach.
Right, and those committees also know that their normal funding processes should be followed. So I was surprised that there was a lack of applications to Community Preservation Committee for their typical historical elements. I really expected to see those 2 projects go forward as CPC applications as well. They have until November 1st to get those in, right? So we're confusing our boards and committees by asking them to bypass their typical processes for getting their projects funded. They should go through the same level of detail and applications that they would for CPC funding or capital planning or any of our established processes. If it turns out in the end that the funding source is ARPA, great, but they should, if they've got an idea, they should go through the same processes they use every year to do capital planning and do projects. And I'm worried that we are confusing the boards and the committees with this ARPA stuff. It's very straightforward. If you've got a need out of your committee, go through your normal process. That might get funded by ARPA. It might get funded by grants. It might get funded by free cash. We've got processes for that. Now I remember the point I was going to make. This ARPA money is the same amount that we have for free cash every year. So really, we've just got an injection on the same order of the free cash that we deal with every year. Instead of $2 million, we got $4 million, right? And then that's spread across 2 years. So really, we just got some extra free cash to deal with. We have some looser rules in terms of which body it goes through for planning. But in the end, we're just dealing with some extra free cash. And our financial planning, our appropriations, our town departments, they know how to deal with that. This is really simple lifting. If we do a better job at tabulating these requests, getting them into the pipelines that are established, That's all we needed to do. And we wasted 4 months. And that's what's frustrating, is that it would have been so simple to take the public input and immediately allocate those to the appropriate places to be worked and all this time. I'm very frustrated that what we have in front of us today is a step backwards in terms of the information we had on June 17th, when that list could have been compiled, tabulated, and we can go off from that. And that's just, I'm embarrassed. And I'm really disappointed in what we have in front of us tonight. It is such a step backwards in terms of what we collected and what we know, and bypassing the processes that are well established. And to have this on the heels of what you see come through Complete Streets, it just makes it all the more apparent that really nothing has been done in the last few months.
Well, Scott, we've collected a tremendous amount of information that we did not have before that meeting, and the bulk of the requests that came in that meeting were from members of the public, not from committees or people that have a standard path to request budget items. So I'll leave it at that. We know what we're doing going forward. I have Jason, I'll get to you in a second. I just want to throw out two questions for the board. One is, we have not closed submissions for ARPA ideas. We could if we wanted to, or we can say, you know what, it's only closed once we've committed all the funds. Maybe new ideas will come in, new needs will be arisen. That's up to the board whether we want to close submissions. And two, when we go through these, one option that I've had is in my head is, do we want to maybe meet in person to have that type of discussion of going through them? It'd be a little bit different of a meeting. It might be more productive to sit around a table, even different than our usual meeting table, and chat about them and go have it be a working meeting rather than a voting meeting where we would eventually vote and commit funds. So I wanted to throw those two ideas out there. Jason, you had your hand up as I was starting to speak.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
The point I was going to make is the economic circumstances we find ourselves in today are rather different from what they were 8-9 months ago. We've had quite somewhat of a downturn in the economy, rising interest rates, inflation. Those are going to impact some of the projects that might have been in front of us. And so I think we need to be mindful of that as to what projects we undertake, at what cost, and also for potentially being conservative in how quickly we expend the money, just to give ourselves some flexibility over the next year. We do have until the end of next year, 2024, to encumber the money. I think that there are some. It's difficult to forecast what's going to happen, and to the extent ARPA money can be, in some sense, a reserve for particular projects we might undertake that otherwise would be coming out of tax dollars, then I think it's important to have that consideration in mind when we're thinking about what projects to approve. The second point I wanted to make is that we can't be all things to all people. There are many, many requests in front of us. The more and various number of requests we entertain or attempt to address, I think the greater problem it's going to cause in terms of just the overhead to go through that process, the decision process, and then following the decisions, the administration process, because, just for example, to take one example, right? The notion of gift cards, purchasing gift cards from local businesses and distributing those to members of the community who might benefit from them. That's just not going to happen by itself. Somebody's going to have, someone or several someones are going to have to put together a process for that, administer that process. So some of those things, while they seem attractive, aren't nearly as simple to execute as you would think. And so I think fewer rather than more projects, and fewer, more impactful projects that serve the broad needs of the community are where we should be looking. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Julianne?
I
It
love
might
the
be
idea
interesting.
of meeting in person and just having a dedicated meeting to figure out how we're going to organize ourselves for this process. And just while we're all here, I had actually started to think about how to categorize this, and maybe you have some ideas tonight also, so we can all start to think about it. But the 6 categories I came up with were small business / economic development. That was a lot of requests. 2 would be funding directly to departments, committees, volunteer organizations. Like, for example, the community meals asked for a certain amount, senior center asked for a certain amount. 3 was open space. 4 was clean energy, climate initiatives. There were some requests for that. 5, downtown improvements. And then 6 was municipal buildings. And I further thought, so let's just say we do, we combine all of the ideas for downtown improvements. That could go to MPIC. We could give $500,000 to them and say, do what you think is best. So that's just, and that's not, this is not, I'm not digging my heels in. This is just, I'm just trying to think how is the best way for us to start organizing this?
I think when we work on the categories, as we go through each item, you kind of figure it out. There will be some, I think that's a great starting point for categories. There may be items that don't fit, or you may end up with a huge number in one category and it needs to be broken out. So I don't think it's a good idea to tie ourselves to any particular set, but I appreciate you giving it some initial thought. Kristen, you had your hand up before.
Yeah, I would like to just throw out there's not one right way to do this, although some people might think there is. There isn't. Though everyone in this town might have a different opinion on what the best way to spend this money is. And there are 5 of us who get to vote on it, and we each get 1 vote. And it behooves us to treat each other with respect and thank each other for the work we're doing, and understand that a group that's arguing about how things may have gone in the past isn't the most efficient way to do anything. So I agree that the in-person meeting sounds like a really good idea. I think that might make things smoother, because Zoom does tend to cause awkward pauses sometimes, and us having to raise our hand and be called on and everything. Maybe a good thing, maybe not a great thing, depending on the conversation. I think the different categories, if everyone could come with some ideas of what the category should be or share them at this next meeting, I think that's a great idea, rather than putting it on 2 people to say, this is what we want done. And then if it's not done exactly how everyone wants, then people are unhappy. So I just feel like another meeting where we really dig in might be the best way to do it. And people can come armed with whatever information they want. They can look up all the previous emails. They can rewatch the ARPA meeting that we had at the high school. Whatever works for people, I think because I think we all are thinking about this in our own ways, and we all have our own system.
I think given the discussion tonight, it is probably going to be most helpful if the next time we talk about this, these are categorized already. But as a larger group, we can recategorize. It'll be just 2 of us doing that. And we could certainly be convinced to change our minds, and any group of 3 could change our minds as to how we categorize. I think it's just a starting point for discussion. But I agree with most of the comments that I heard, that I think we need to do that additional work before we talk about the specifics again. I think I've heard from most people that they're open to the idea of an in-person meeting to talk about this. Is that universal?
Yeah, no problem there.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That would, just in case anyone questions it, that would absolutely still be a public meeting under the open meeting law. It would be posted. I would certainly encourage that it at least be videotaped so people could watch our deliberations, but it would probably be a single issue meeting without other business. So we have as much time as possible in that format to get that work done, really a working meeting rather than a traditional business meeting. If there's nothing else on this topic, I do have one hand up in the audience. I would like to recognize Amy Paretsky. Amy?
Yep, thanks. It takes me a little while to find the mute button.
Sure.
But I just want to thank everybody for all the work that they do. And I wanted to talk to why I wrote a letter for ARPA funding for the multi-use trail, just in case I'm not at the next meeting. But I know there is a CPC process to go through it, and Ashley and I are considering, I mean, we're definitely going to go through the CPC application process, but there are a lot of projects on that list right now. So we thought ARPA was another way to ask for the money for the feasibility study. This would be a trail that would be accessible to all, ADA accessible, young and old, but also, like Lori had spoken, that the governor is changing and a lot of grants may come, may go. And by using ARPA money, we would have the money to start the feasibility study in the spring to try to get on top of other grants. There have been grants, Mass Trails grants gives 400,000. There have been a lot of grants for these multi-use trails. So that was the reason why I just wanted to say that was the reason why we went that route. We're going to apply for ARPA money. We're going to apply to the CPC, and we'll probably apply for Mass Trails grant. But I just wanted to speak to it while I was in the audience tonight. I don't know if anybody had any questions. I know there was concern.
I don't.
Yep.
Amy, my preference is to not get into discussions of the details of any particular project at this time. There will be opportunities for that. Kristen, you had your hand up. I don't know if you had something more general to respond to.
I was just going to ask a question about the, do you have to do the feasibility study before you do the other stuff? That was my only.
Yes.
I just
Yep.
didn't. Okay.
The feasibility, Westboro already did a feasibility study, and that's where we got our numbers.
Okay.
And they really have to lay out where the easements would go, the crossings would go. If we apply for grants, they're going to want to know all the technical details.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Amy.
Yep.
Okay, I was the only hand up during that time. Does anyone else have anything else that they want to add on the ARPA topic before we continue our meeting?
Sorry.
Julia.
Amy brings up a good point that another layer that we're going to have to think about is multiple sources of funding for some of these projects and which is the best route to take. So she brought up that, if ARPA gives for that trail, and this is just an example, I don't want to talk about it specifically, but there's a time crunch for her. And, so I think there's just so much that goes into it. What project is best going to CPC versus ARPA versus maybe there's something with the infrastructure bill that's coming down the pike. So this is a good starting place because I think we've identified all different areas of information that we're going to need to make good decisions.
Okay, thank you. And Kristen.
Sorry, just quick. So maybe when you're making your next list, could you identify when possible, when when something is a time-sensitive project? Because we did deal with that in the first round of voting for the ARPA money. And I think it was the Proctor roof that we voted on quickly or something. And that is really helpful information.
Where that's apparent, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
If not, as we discuss the items, we might pull a few of those out as well. Okay, thank you. All right. Next on our agenda are reports. Let's see, Scott, do you have any reports tonight?
Yeah, just kind of two areas. First, as always, the thanks to the chiefs for their reports. And I don't know if Chief Parentius is still available, but there's an element from the fire chief's report that would be worthwhile to get a little more word out on fire prevention, if you don't mind, Chief, on the mulch beds.
Sure, Scott, thank you. I had mentioned in my report about an incident we had last month involving a mulch bed fire that extended into the structure. And a lot of people don't realize that mulch beds will spontaneously combust, unfortunately. If you drive by drive down West Main Street, you see the big piles of mulch on the side. When it's raining, they're always steaming. It's because they're heating up, right? But they're wet enough. If they wet enough, what happens is people pile their mulch right up against the house, so against the vinyl siding or against the wood siding. It's deep enough so the heat can't escape. It dries out and it's spontaneously combustion. And fire code in the state actually requires anything larger than a 6-family residential to have 18-inch clearance from your combustible siding. We recommend, even if you're 6 family or less, you kind of do the same thing, because in this particular case, mulch was pushed up to the building and up above the siding. So even if for some reason it doesn't spontaneously combust, people aren't always careful with their cigarettes or other materials, and it can start a fire and it spreads really quickly. I'm very lucky. Thank you for putting it out.
Thanks, Chief. And just doesn't necessarily need a comment from Lieutenant Griffin, but I just want to say, congratulations to Officer Lonergan in her graduation from the academy. Looking forward to seeing her in field training and on duty soon. So good stuff out of the police department. Well, with Melissa Lonergan. Update from the ZBA. They had a really good discussion at their last meeting on the importance of providing input in the process of developing the zoning bylaw changes, working with the planning board, not too early before all the ideas that formed from the planning board, but not too late in that the articles were already drafted for town meeting. So I think they came to some really good conclusions and a good plan of attack for working with the round of zoning bylaw changes for this year. That ends my report.
Thank you, Scott. Kristen. You are muted.
Thank you. Last weekend, Saturday, I attended the Women Elected Municipal Officials Conference. They call themselves WEMO. I met and heard from Women Select Board and City Council members, mayors, and State Representative Tram Nguyen from the Merrimack Valley. It was really inspiring for me to meet other women who wear as many hats as I do or more and manage to do good work for their towns and keep everything managed. Many of us at the conference still found ourselves describing ourselves as selectmen, and some of them, when they were introducing themselves, they would say, one of them said, "I'm the new selectman lady," or something like that. Like, where other towns have clearly changed their name to town council or select board officially. So just a pitch on behalf of all the WEMO people and all the women in Northborough, let's not let that ball drop. We really need to change our name. The Youth Commission has been working really hard on the problem of how to prioritize mental health care in Northborough. And they have a proposal for the BOS, so that'll be really great. They did some good work there. I checked in with Becca Quick today, and the DEIB committee will be starting up pretty soon. She's just been still managing, probably digging through her inbox, but DEIB will be starting up in the next, hopefully, couple of weeks, right? Ish. And my quote tonight is from Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce Indians. It does not require many words to speak the truth. Thanks.
Julianne, any reports?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm on the Master Plan Implementation Committee, and I attended the walk around the downtown area with Weston and Sampson, who is the firm that we hired to do the downtown revitalization plan. And this was really interesting. They came with, oh my gosh, more than half a dozen people. There were economic specialists, people who just concentrated on traffic and traffic patterns, landscape architects, and it was really interesting to see the town through their eyes. There was a lot of interest in 4 West Main Street, the old town hall, questions about putting utility lines underground, a lot of ideas about traffic calming and looking at some of the intersections. And it was interesting, I think, for those of us who live in town also to have, you know, our beautiful bodies of water pointed out, and why those are not, we're not making the most of it. So it was really good, and I think that that we're really starting on the right track here to do the downtown revitalization. I also went to the CPC meeting, and they discussed really just one project, which was the high school's athletic fields. And then there was a considerable discussion about what, if anything, they should do about funding for White Cliffs. And finally, Kristen and I had the pleasure of speaking to a Girl Scout troop the other night. And we did a little role playing and pretended that we were all on the select board. And the topic we had to discuss was whether or not we should throw candy at Apple Fest. So just for future reference, it was a unanimous decision that the select board should throw candy. And I hope we remember that next September. So
we also got some suggestions, didn't we?
Yes, and I honestly couldn't remember what they were, so we'll have to discuss for when we do have a for real meeting. That ends my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Julianne. Jason, any reports?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one item I wanted to mention, and that is that the fire department on its Facebook website is doing profiles of each of the members of the department. So there are several profiles already up there. It's very interesting just to read through and understand the backgrounds and long service of some of our members. So I just appreciate that. I think it's very helpful for the community to just see that, have access to that, meet the members of your department. And I just found it very interesting, very valuable. So I appreciate that they're doing that. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Jason. I agree. I'm enjoying those posts as well. Got a couple of things. I want to congratulate Northborough resident Zach Newbold on his amazing performance on the national TV show The Voice. That was great to see Northborough so well represented. And I think a week after someone from Shrewsbury was represented also. So it was good to get someone right in town. Lori has been very busy with different projects and very involved in Scott Charpentier as well with the dog park site. Gave a fantastic presentation and community input on that last week. So I'd encourage anyone who has an interest in such things to go ahead and take a look at that meeting video and or the presentation and send in any feedback as far as the 4 sites that they've narrowed it down to. One question I've noticed, and I've seen it come up a couple of times, is the police station could use a paint job. I don't know if John, if that's something that's on a list somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah, great.
It's part of the capital plan.
Excellent. Good.
Historically, we have been able to participate in a program through the sheriff's office. So the last time we were able to get the place painted just for the cost of the paint. So that program got suspended during COVID. We're hoping it comes back. We're not sure, but just to not to belabor the point, but we have to pay prevailing wages. Otherwise, we got quotes, and so they wanted $80,000 to paint what is basically a big house. Any local painter could do it for, below 10 grand. So this is what we're dealing with, trying to get these things done cost effectively. So, but it is in the plan that we're aware that is a project that's in the queue.
Thank you, John. Another quick question for you, John. I noticed that the RFP went out for White Cliffs, which I'm very excited about. And by the way, I saw our DPW did an amazing job cleaning up that site in preparation for the tour, which I believe is November 1st. So my question, if you're not already expecting it, is can the Board of Selectmen of the White Cliffs Committee get into that building, whether it be on the same day or someday nearby, as we've discussed in the past?
Yeah, we'll have a discussion offline about trying to find a date.
Perfect.
And as I said, just so everybody's clear, we don't have insurance coverage for people to be in that building. So everybody's going to have to sign a waiver if they want to come through. So
sure, understand. Thank you. And everyone is just limited, I think, to those two boards. Just a lot of people ask if the public can go through that building, and the answer is no. The building is not in a condition for that. I do want to mention that today I attended a video webinar from the MMA on a new recycling law that's going into effect in a couple of weeks, where mattresses can no longer be disposed of through regular town trash, and that's statewide. So I did speak with John afterwards. I know some town staff attended that also, and the town is in the process of figuring out how to respond to that. But there were some great ideas from a couple of one city and one or two towns that have already implemented things that they're ready to go on November 1st. So hopefully we can find some way to deal with that for folks in town that need to dispose of a mattress properly. It needs to be recycled, and it turns out most of them can be very well recycled. And I'll throw another vote in there, if you will, informal vote in there for changing our name to the Select Board. I think we should do that. John, I don't know if you've ever given any thought to that. I don't need a response right now, but I'd love to hear from you offline as to what the process would be to making that happen. That ends my reports. John, did you have anything?
yeah, I'll be providing prior to your in-person meeting to go through the ARPA stuff, some updates regarding some of the state programs. And one of the issues I'm sure you've heard about is the legislature has ended its formal session. And unfortunately, they were given the news that they're going to be about $3 billion short of funding that they thought they were going to have in order to do an economic development bill. And that's because of the automatic kick in under the Mass General Law, where we actually, some of the good news is many of us, if not all of us, will be getting some form of a state income tax rebate. The bad news is that it's formulaic, and the legislature wasn't counting on that kicking in. So now that that is part of the mix, it is delayed and confused significantly. What are they going to do in terms of the surplus and their ARPA funding? So originally they thought they had a pool of money, but that is now $3 billion less. So they weren't able to get it done. They weren't able to figure it out. Their formal session has ended, which means now they're in informal session. And as you probably know, in informal session, all it takes is for one member to object to something and it doesn't move forward. So very difficult to move anything forward in the time being. So that's going to add some delay and confusion, because one of the things that we've been talking about is making sure that we don't want to be using our ARPA funds for something that either the state budget surplus or their ARPA funds would potentially take care of. So that's added a little bit, another layer of confusion and a little bit of delay, but I'll get you some more information on that so we can sort of map out how that plays into our ARPA discussions.
Thank you, John. Let's see, next on our agenda, we spoke about it before, but there's going to be a new governor in the State House soon. So we need to execute the November 8th, 2022 state election warrant. John.
In your packet from the town clerk is the warrant for your review and execution. Again, there's really not a lot of debate. This is the warrant. So that's the action that's before you tonight.
Would anyone like to make a motion or have any questions?
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman. I move the board vote to execute the November 8th, 2022 state election warrant.
Second.
Motion made by Julianne, seconded by Scott. Any discussion? All those in favor? Scott?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
I, Mitch Cohen, also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. We have an election warrant. Fantastic. And is there any other business before this board and the public
Just the
session
need for
tonight?
a brief executive session, Mr. Chairman.
Before I entertain that motion, is there any other member of the public that wishes to offer comment before we go into executive session? Going once, going twice, gone. I will now entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to enter into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Subsection 3, collective bargaining, update on negotiations with dispatchers, patrol officers, police sergeants, and fire unions, and litigation, update on SA Farms. Due to the chair's determination that a discussion regarding these matters in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the position of the board.
Second.
Motion made by Jason, seconded by Christian. I will add that we will not be returning to public session following the conclusion of the executive session. Any other discussions? All those in favor, Jason?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
I also vote aye. We vote unanimous in favor. We are now headed to executive session. Thank you very much, everybody, and